My name is Rocco, and I live happily in Florida. And when I was born, I was born 2 days after the stock market crashed in 1929. Oh, where? Oh, but I was in New York City, and then I grew up in Connecticut, a small town, small city, and I live now presently in Florida, Melbourne, Florida, and West Melbourne, and happily doing so. Well, I enlisted in 1948, and I spent 20 years in the Navy, finishing out as a senior chief petty officer, and I retired in 1968. Well, I was on 5 different ships. Some people in the Navy stay longer than they stay on more ships, but I was on 5 different ships, and we did repair work for destroyers and keeping the Navy afloat during the Cold War while they were building new ships. You know, and the hull work and all that stuff, and everybody was working to keep the ships afloat until the new ships started coming along. Where'd I go? We used to go to Europe about once every 18 months or so. We'd go to Europe, into the Mediterranean, and work on ships that on the 6th Fleet, used to work there, and we'd come back and spend the rest of the time in Norfolk, working on ships, and I had my family there, and that was it. But the only thing I could think of that was really, you could say now, at the time we just joked about it, is when we almost collided with a tanker carrying aviation fuel. And this was in North Africa. And we were tied up Mediterranean moors, like the stern to the pier. And I was down in the shop. It was in the evening. I was down in the shop, which was right near the stern of the ship in Fantail, near the stern. And I heard a noise that you can't really imitate that noise. It's just with one of these big hawsers breaking. I could hear it. Such a noise it made, you can't describe it, but there was a noise. And I knew, I don't know, but why I knew is I said, the lines are parting. So then you heard another one, and you couldn't go up on deck because if one of those lines had hit you, probably cut you in half. So our ship, the stern of it, now was being swung by the wind, and it was coming close to the tanker. And I got a couple of guys standing by with fire hoses to, if any sparks come up or we did any more damage. As it was, we just glanced off them about that much. And we did put a dent in the trim of the ship. But the reason we didn't collide with it was a chief bosun mate, at the time he heard those noises, I guess, he ran to the bow and had his crew starting to take in the anchor, which pulled us away and gave our radius that we were spinning a shorter distance. So with him to really save it from a collision. But that was the closest one. After that, everybody joked about it, and that was it. We put the hoses back. But what we used to tie up in Naples, there was 2 ships that sank. I'll say, closer than from here to the corner, maybe about 50. I don't know. How many? I'm trying to think. For the ship was, I'd say about 60 or 70 feet or so, or maybe a little bit. Yeah, maybe close about 100 feet from where we were. A ship sank because a storm in the bay caused it to drag its anchor and just came in and hit the pier, hit the rocks and all that, or the mold they called it, and it sank. I had pictures of it, if I can find them someplace. That was one. And a few years later, in 1963, I think it was, same place, another ship came in and sank right there. Call that a coincidence? Yeah. My cousin was in the Navy at the same time I was.
The Italian.
He was in the Italian Navy, of course. And I was there around Christmas time one year. I forgot what year, maybe 1950, around 50 or something like that. And so he was taking time off my ship, and he'd come aboard mine. And while I'd be working during the daytime, he was with me, and all that. It was allowed, so, being related. But they invited me over to be like the guest of honor on their small ship. They were on a Corvette. And for Christmas dinner, we sat there 4 hours eating and drinking. We didn't care if they let me off the ship or not. But one time while we were with him, I told you that. Didn't I tell you we went to see a movie, in Italian of course, of Cinderella? And all the animals and everyone who was speaking Italian in the movie, and you couldn't get over it. Even the little mice were. So. Oh no, that's another story. I had gone into the National Guard when I was about 17, which other people did too. After the war, there was still, the war was still in everybody's minds, and it was still, the draft was on, and I says, I don't want to be drafted. I said, I want this. I think I've always heard the Navy was nice, and I thought of joining the Navy. So I did. And the other guys were about to say, look, you don't have any problems. And what are you going into the Navy for? We get in the National Guards, you're home every day and this and that and stuff. And I said, I'm going to go in the Navy, which I did. And to make it long story short on this deal, a short time later is when Korea caused the war. And all these guys were drafted or were in the National Guards. They were all federalized, and most of them went to Korea. And here I was on the East Coast in Connecticut, out of Connecticut, having a good time in the Navy. See? Sleeping good, eating good. But that was the reason I went in. In Boston, when I was in the Navy, the ship was in Boston, 1950. 1950 went to Boston, and and I lived in Connecticut, so it was no more than an hour or so to get home. So on a weekend, they would let you off the ship early if you agreed to donate blood. So a bunch of us would get off, go to wherever we were supposed to go by bus. They'd take us there, and we would donate blood. After that, we were on our own until Monday morning. So I would jump on another bus and go to Connecticut, and waiting for a bus to go to the small town. It was right across the street from a tavern. So I thought I'd go in there and have a beer. When I went in there, a guy says, "Here's a sailor. We won the election. Give him a drink." So I said, "No, I don't want no drinks. I don't want no drinks." He says, I said, "I'd have a beer." So he, instead of getting 5 drinks for 50, a drink of whiskey for 50 cents, they got me 5 beers for 10 cents. So then they were slapped me on the back, saying by the time the bus came, I drank about 3 of them. And with donating blood before, and I hadn't eaten, when I staggered on the bus, I slept all the way. I was feeling pretty good when I got home. This weekend, you get weekends off the ship. We call it a 72. You leave Friday after work, and you had Friday evening off, Saturday, and then Sunday be back. You had to be back by Monday morning. by mustard, 8 o'clock. And but this from Norfolk. So, however you got back up to New York City or whatever to go to where you had to go, it was up to you, I guess. But coming back, they had what they call I think it was a military special or something like that. It left New York about 8 o'clock at night, and it went over to Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, picked up a bunch of servicemen there, and it'd be all loaded with sailors, all military. And then it'd go down to the Virginia Peninsula, Delmarva Peninsula, and you had to get a ferry to go from there across the Chesapeake Bay to Norfolk. And this was about, I'd say about 2 in the morning. So you never saw anything like it. With the train would be coming to a stop, all the sailors would be ready to jump off and run for the ferry while the train was still running, moving. It's still moving slow. It would jump off like you see in the movies, and everybody be running for the crew, the ferries, big ferries, that would take you to Norfolk. But we would get running so you get a good place to sleep. Because on the floor, on a bench, on the deck, on a bench, whatever, on cabinets, and we'd sleep there. So we had a 2-hour ride to Norfolk. And you never saw anything like it. All these sailors really all running and do it every week. As far as I know, no one got hurt. Now it's against the law, you know. Where they used to have big bonfires in the street at Halloween. They'd have a fire, and a big metal-lined push cart that the guy would have a charcoal fire in the bottom, and he'd be cooking sweet potatoes, and they were the best sweet potatoes we ever ate. Oh, they were delicious. You can't make them that way now. What else? And the dead horses in the street when, because we lived almost across the street from the dairy, Borden's Dairy, and when a horse would die, because they used to pull the milk wagons, when a horse would die, they'd have to put it in the street until the sanitary people picked it up. Yeah, rain in summer and winter, going to school, walking. Once in a while, when there was ice in the streets, we use our ice skates down the hill and ice skate to school. But it wasn't that often, but enough that then you'd have to carry your shoes with you because the sun had melted or melt with the heat of the day. But what else? They provided everything in school. You learned a lot. You didn't talk back. You didn't do anything you weren't supposed to do, not like the schools today. And you could carry a knife to school, but all the boys had to lean boot strap on and wear a knife. A little knife slot where you could put in a jackknife in there, and we used jackknife for playing and cutting, but not people or threatening or anything else. And girls were girls; they had all skirts, not dressed the way they are now, and the boys same thing. By pencils, not pencils, but paper, the books. And all that, and you had desks, and you didn't have to worry, no lockers, you didn't have to worry about anyone stealing anything. You put it in your desk, which had a top on it, you open it up, put your books in there. You had the same desk every week, every day. And gym, you had drawing, art classes, music classes, history, geography, all that stuff.